Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. Here on a Thursday, episode 96, approaching episode 100 of To The Point, which is kind of crazy and also really exciting for me to, I've been doing this since November, to be in mid-April and to be at 100 episodes. Um, I'm I'm happy, and also just for the people that have supported me along the way, I really appreciate it. And episode 100, I'm still trying to work through what that's going to be. Whether I'm going to try to get a guest, do a round table, but I'm going to work on that. I'll let you guys know. Still have a lot of episodes coming before, so a lot of good content coming your way before that. But just know that something will be in the works for that for sure. Um, but when it comes to the world of sports right now, I mean, it's a polar opposite from last April, where last April was the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, where NHL was shut down. We had Major League Baseball cancel spring training. The NBA was paused. Every pro sport was shut down. And now in a week from Saturday, the UFC is holding an event in Jacksonville where the place is going to be sold out. So it's crazy to see a year and what can happen. Obviously, here in Canada, we haven't had too many sporting events with fans in it, more than 15 to 20 people. So our government's been a little bit slower than the United States, but we see in Texas, Florida, and then announced also the UFC is going to be holding a sold out event July 10th for McGregor Poirier 3 in Las Vegas. So we are starting to see fans come back into stadiums, and hopefully sooner rather than later we can see barns start to get filled here in Canada. Just going to the Wildcats game, having good capacity, things like that. But you know, looking back, you got to think where you were and where we are now. We're certainly in a much better position than we were a year ago, so that's something to be thankful for. Um, but yeah, just speaking on the sports, I mean, we got baseball in full swing now, a couple weeks into the season. We got the NBA, we got the NHL. We just had the Masters golf tournament starting today in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Like I mentioned, UFC going every other weekend. So lots happening today in the podcast. I'm going to talk about start off talking about the Blue Jays, pivot into some other baseball stories, including some teams really struggling out of the gate that had high expectations. And it's tough with baseball because you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's 162, and that's it's a lot of games, and playing 9 or 10, uh, and looking and thinking, oh, this is the team that's going to be. Obviously, it can be difficult. I don't think the Detroit Tigers or the Baltimore Orioles are going to be game breakers late into the season. But we'll get into that. Touch on some hockey and debuts for players. Anthony Mantha, Andres Bjork, Taylor Hall, David Riddick, Devin Dubnyk last night for the Colorado Avalanche, and also preview some of the games tonight, which we have some great games in the NHL tonight with playoff implications, including Tampa Bay, Florida, New York Islanders, Boston, Nashville, Carolina, and also Toronto and Winnipeg. Winnipeg coming off a victory last night in the nation's capital. They head to Toronto. They play 4 times. They play four of the times this year. So down the stretch, these two teams are going to meet a lot. So these games are important. Winnipeg's cut the lead to 5 with a win tonight in regulation. I think Toronto would lock up number 1 seed in the Canadian division. I think they'll win it regardless, but I think with a win tonight, they can coast. They can start playing golf in Toronto if they really want to, because they're going to have free time. And I'm also going to touch on some NBA. Some bad news from the Denver Nuggets with Jamal Murray tearing his ACL, but also go through a big game last night between Philly and the Brooklyn Nets, which looked like an Eastern Conference Final preview, the play of Joel Embiid, the MVP race, and among other things. So lots to get to today, but I'll start with talking about the Blue Jays. Now, when it comes to baseball, for me, it's like every other sport. I don't have a favorite team. I bought the NHL package. I'm considering buying the Major League Baseball package, but when you see the money for it, you kind of makes me shake a little bit. But the hard thing for me with baseball is you only get the Blue Jays because they're on Sportsnet, and I will watch the games, but I don't like watching the same team over and over again. When it comes to hockey, I get the sports package. Last night I watched Colorado and St. Louis, a lot of that game. I watched Philadelphia and Brooklyn in basketball. I flip between those two things primarily. I like having options. When it comes to baseball, you really only get the Blue Jays. And then sometimes you'll get a late game. Dodgers Rockies was on the other night. I am seeing TSN kind of up their baseball coverage, which I think they should. With they've lost the NHL rights. They do have some NBA, but hopefully we continue to see that, because I'm gonna watch the Blue Jays. Of course, I'll follow them being in Canada, but I'm not like a fan where I say, well, I gotta watch every Blue Jays game. That's not my prerogative. That's not how I watch sports, just to watch one team, because for me, doing this podcast and what I look at as my job is to have a good sense, have a good lens of every team. And that's what I try to do. I try to bring the most information on everybody. And I just look, but the Blue Jays are an interesting young team. So it's not like in past years where you're watching, a bunch of players past their prime that are still there, or last year even, where they make the playoffs, but because it was expanded playoffs, so they really didn't make the playoffs. It was only a 60-game season, and anyway, a lot of stuff happening there. But again, factors, shortened season. So this is the big year. So they're playing 162 this year, unless COVID just kills teams. But so far, it's been pretty good. Teoscar Hernandez has tested positive for the Blue Jays. Gold Glove winning shortstop Anderson Simmons tested positive for the Minnesota Twins. But no huge shutdowns since the Mets Nationals on opening day. But to this point, the Toronto Blue Jays are 5-5. They got there yesterday with a walk-off win over the New York Yankees. Bo Bichette hitting the ninth inning home run. They get the win. The Yankees dropped to 4-6. Blue Jays are 5-5. And I see these teams, they're very similar, but also the Yankees and Blue Jays have similar problems with the roster, and that's pitching. The Blue Jays, to be honest, their pitching hasn't been terrible so far this year. I think Hyunjin Ryu's made 3 quality starts. You can't ask more from him. He's likely only going to go 6 innings, which that's what you're getting. I wouldn't call Hyunjin Ryu the most. He wouldn't be the hardest working guy that I've ever seen pitch in my life. I don't see him as a guy that's going to work really hard to get that 7th inning out of you. But he did it against the Texas Rangers. He did go 7, so I'll give him credit for that. But again, I wouldn't call him the hardest working pitcher in baseball. Ross Stripling had to miss a start. He's injured. They have Steven Matz. He's made 2 quality starts so far this year. They've moved Tanner Roark to the bullpen, which is a great move because Tanner Roark is not a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball anymore. Or he could be for the Orioles or Tigers and be a really bad team. But a team with playoff aspirations like the Toronto Blue Jays, you're behind the 8 ball from the start with a guy like him. They also have had TJ Zoik make starts. So Robbie Ray had a decent start in his first one. So their pitching has been questionable. Rafael Dolis has been a little bit rocky out of the bullpen. But so far, I'd say it's been a pretty strong start for the bullpen of the Jays. Their starting pitching leaves something to be desired. But we knew that was going to happen before the season started. If somebody told me the Blue Jays have a rock star starting 5 pitchers, I have to check the inside of their head because it just isn't that good. I look at the Yankees. They have a really good bullpen as well with the likes of Chad Green. Chad Green is really the ace there. There's Chapman. People, have their problems with Chapman. Chapman still can throw 101 miles an hour. He can still get the job done when they need him to. They also have some flexible guys that they like to use, but I like thinking of those 2 guys. They got a strong end to their bullpen. Chad Green is basically their Andrew Miller now. He can go multiple innings, and he did take the loss last night, but that's going to happen. He pitches in a lot of high stake, cards are on the table, so to speak, situations. You're not going to come out of that every time. So you'll take that. But looking at the Yankees starting pitching, you got Corey Kluber. Corey Kluber is coming off a season where he had Tommy John surgery. He was on the back end of his career in Cleveland. They let him walk. They didn't pick up an option. And now they look at him as one of their best pitchers. That's not good. They got Jamison Tylon from the Pittsburgh Pirates. he's not worked out well so far this year. They do have Garrett Cole, who I think is the best pitcher in baseball, but after that, it's thin. Domingo Germán, unproven starter. You look at they've moved on from J Happ and James Paxton, which I think were good moves, but you miss Masahiro Tanaka. And when I look at the Blue Jays, and I'm starting to think they may be a bit better than New York Yankees for a couple of reasons. Again, the pitching, that's a wash. But the Blue Jays have more upside when it comes to their bats. Look at Bo Bichette having a great start. Gets a walk-off yesterday. He's hitting over 300. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's had a subpar start to his career, if I'm being nice. The guy's been out of shape. The guy hasn't been able to play a position effectively his first couple of years in the league. And for a guy who had more hype than anyone maybe ever coming into the league, the guy's underdelivered. And for passionate Blue Jays fans, I don't think you can disagree with that. But you see him this year, he's lost 42 pounds. That's been reported on about 100 times that it's so, which is great, but he's a pro athlete. You should be in shape. That's not something that you should need to be told. Like, get your ass in shape. But you got him. You got Randall Grichuk, who I'm not buying into that he's going to be an everyday center fielder and be great, because I've seen Randall Grichuk. He'll go through his hot spurts, and then he'll go a month where he hits one home run with 2 ribbies and bats 167. So, but he's been great to start the year. I think Kevin Biggio has more to offer than, say, Aaron Hicks or Brett Gardner or even Clint Frazier, who usually plays left field for the Yankees. Yes, the Yankees have Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, but I look at the rest of their lineup. Gleyber Torres is a guy who should be a star. I think he will be. Still needs to improve his hitting. But you look at Gary Sanchez, Kyle Nishioka. That's basically Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro Kirk's a guy that the Blue Jays believe his bat could be a real weapon. But you think of Bo Vladdy, Kevin Biggio, George Springer. I mean, the guy hasn't played yet this year. He's going to miss at least the next road trip. So they're heading to Kansas City tonight. He's out for that whole road trip, 4-game set. But, I mean, he's a Gold Glove winning center fielder. He's a guy that's won a World Series. He bats leadoff. He sets the table for the rest of the lineup. And it'll be interesting, but the Blue Jays have beaten the Yankees in 2 series already this season. And I look at Stanton, the guy's always hurt, and I think that's really affected him. Since coming to the Yankees, he hasn't been the same player that he was in Miami. And he's injured all the time. He doesn't have that same power. Since he broke his jaw, I think he's really been tentative at the plate. He used to kind of stick his head in there, not be afraid to, muck it up a little bit, so to speak. I haven't seen that same Giancarlo Stanton. And I think there'll be a tight race because I don't think either team is particularly really gifted. You look at the National League. I think the Dodgers, a team struggling out of the gate, the Braves, I think they'll turn it around, though. Those teams are set very well. The American League, there's not one team where you go, okay, that's the best team. On paper, they should be dominant, in my opinion. The Minnesota Twins are a really good team, but the Minnesota Twins haven't won anything to play. I mean, they're basically the Toronto Maple Leafs of Major League Baseball. They haven't won anything in forever. They'll get to the playoffs and get swept. They do that to the Yankees on seems like every other year. So it's wide open for teams to grab it. And if I'm Ross Atkins, who just got a 5-year extension, GM of the Blue Jays, you look at your division. Yeah, the Red Sox have won 9 in a row, which kudos. You go into Minnesota, you beat them 3 out of the 4 so far. They play again this afternoon. You look good. You started off the season 0-3 after losing 3 to the Orioles, but you bounced back. You won 9 in a row. You got a strong team, no doubt. But you got a strong team right now, but I look at their roster. JD Martinez is still a good player. You got Alex Verdugo there. You got Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Eduardo Rodriguez, but I don't like the longevity of their team to be even competitive for the division title all year long. Orioles are a wash. That's not happening. The Rays have Tyler Glass now. He's a fantastic. Chris Archer's actually been decent to start the season. but they just went to Texas and got shellacked, just losing very badly there. Again, the Rays are worse than they were last year. You lose a Cy Young winner in Blake Snell, you're not going to be as good. And their roster is still really cheap. I mean, that's the Rays' MO. And are your bit piece plug and play guys going to be as productive as they were last year? Well, none of them are superstars. None of them are elite talents. So thinking they're going to be the same when they're not elite to begin with is a dangerous precedent for me. So if I'm Ross Atkins, I look at the landscape and I say, we can have this division. Okay, we beat the Yankees in 2 out of 2 series already. We're not afraid of them. And the Yankees shouldn't be afraid of the Blue Jays either. Or the Rays shouldn't be. None of these teams should be afraid of one another. But just using the Blue Jays as an example here, go get some pitching. And I'm not saying it's got to be today, but I wouldn't wait all year. It's not a trade deadline mid-July where you go get a pitcher. Do it now. Why scrape by and have this division go to September? I remember in 2015 when they won the division, because I was there with my parents. We watched Blue Jays Yankees where they beat them on a Wednesday night and they clinched their first division title in a very long time. But that was the Wednesday. The season ended on Sunday. I think you add some pitching depth. You have regular starters. You don't have to go through a slog the whole season. The Los Angeles Dodgers, even with the Padres being a really good team, are going to lock up the division rather quickly, in my opinion, because their roster is just that damn good. Their team is that damn good. For the Blue Jays, you're all pretty close. Adding 1 or 2 pieces that help you, well, you've already beaten the team already. Imagine having a starting pitcher that you actually trust. That's not a Ross Stripling who's a journeyman. That's not Tanner Roark, who's not Anthony Kay, who's shown no ability to pitch, who's not TJ Zoic, who can give you 3 innings. Imagine you go get a Sonny Gray. Imagine you go get a Luis Castillo. Imagine you go get a Brandon Woodruff from the Milwaukee Brewers, and you improve your team right now. It's just something to consider, because for any of these teams, for these 3, Red Sox, Orioles, I don't include there, this could be your division if you want it. And otherwise, I see it being very nip and tuck all year, because it may just come down to, how you do in the interleague play. So how you play against the National League. How do you favor? Who's the teams that you draw? Health. I mean, the Blue Jays have had tough health. Teoscar Hernandez has COVID. Nate Pearson's on the injured list. Thomas Hatch, Julian Merriweather, their new closer. George Springer, who I mentioned off the top, hasn't played a game yet this year. But getting these players back will help. But adding starting pitching depth could really push you over the top. And if I'm Ross Atkins, if I'm Mark Shapiro, do I think the Blue Jays could win a World Series this year? No, I don't. But we see teams that win championships. I don't care what sport it is. You go through growing pains. The Tampa Bay Lightning got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets and got embarrassed in the first round after winning 62 regular season games and setting an NHL record for a regular season dominance. They went through that scar tissue. They came back the next year and they won the Stanley Cup. It happens. Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins made it to a cup final in 2008. They lost. They went through that sting. They came back the next season in 2009. They defeat Detroit. They get their championship. The Blue Jays have built a young core thinking this is the team to win a championship. Well, maybe you don't win the World Series, but maybe you get to ALCS, or at least you get some experience where guys are getting postseason at bats. You don't usually see green teams win championships. The Washington Capitals and the San Francisco Giants went through this. They took them time to win. The New York Mets, the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs in 2015 went to the NLCS. They took that scar tissue. The next season, they come back. They end a 108-year World Series drought, and they win the title. The Kansas City Royals lost in 2014. They won it in 2015. This happens in every sport. Unless it's the NBA where super teams can be formed, that doesn't happen in other sports. Teams stick together for the most part, and you come back with the same nucleus and you say, I don't like what happened last year. Let's change this. Bring in a few different players. But I look at the Blue Jays, and this is an opportunity to win a division, which you haven't done since 2016, and potentially compete for a spot in the World Series, because the American League is not strong, and who knows who's going to come out of it. Again, I mentioned the Twins off the top. The White Sox are a team of intrigue. You got the Oakland Athletics, who've been, Houston, but these teams don't have the same aura as they once did. And with a COVID year, different things, who knows how it's going to play out. But I just think it's something to watch out for. What will the Blue Jays management do to try to help the team, try to get starting pitching? Because going to AAA Buffalo, going to the lower ranks, I don't think it's the answer right now. You want a guy that you know is a starting pitcher. Sonny Gray is a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. He's the target for me. He's been really good in Cincinnati, and he's pitched for the Yankees, just had some success. He's had experience pitching in the American League East, and the supposed pressure to pitch in it, which I think that might have existed 5 years ago. Doesn't anymore. The division stinks, but it's just something to consider. So I wouldn't rule out the Yankees trying to reacquire Sonny Gray, because they traded him when he was at when they thought they could get the most for him, and they got a decent haul. But again, he would be a good guy to bring back for that organization. So we'll see what happens in the American League East. Still a lot to be decided. A lot of baseball still to come. Of course, these teams are only 10 games in, still 152 to go. But you get the early returns and you start to wonder, what are these teams going to do to get better and kind of separate themselves from the pack. In baseball, over the last 5-6 days, we've seen 2 no-hitters. So last Friday, Joe Musgrove threw the first no-hitter in Padres history. 52 years the organization's been around, over 8,200 games. There's never been a no-hitter. He throws a no-hitter, will be remembered forever. Again, I was talking to friends about it. I said he could, never have it. He could be a mediocre guy his whole career, but he'll be the first person to ever throw a no-hitter for the San Diego Padres. Never forget that. And then last night, Carlos Rodon, starting pitcher for the Chicago White Sox, throws a no-hitter, throws 114 pitches, gets through the game with an 8-0 win over the Cleveland Indians. And this guy's had injury problems. He's battled through to get to the major leagues, being a highly touted prospect. Again, the injuries, a little inconsistency, made it look like maybe he won't get there. But he's battled through. He's here. He's here now. And the White Sox do have a strong team. Noman Mercedes, you got Tim Anderson there, Yon Moncada, Rodon, Jose Abreu. They got a team that's formidable, and good to see him throw a no-hitter. They got some really interesting prospects to watch. And for the White Sox, two no-hitters, one last Friday, one last night in less than a week. It's pretty crazy. And just congratulations to Rodon, Musgrove, and the San Diego and White Sox organizations for just getting some really good pitchers on the roster. So congratulations to both guys. The Los Angeles Dodgers, we'll talk about a start to the season. They lose their first game of the year. It was pretty funny. They lose to the Colorado Rockies on opening day, and everybody's, they're not that good. Since then, they've gone 10-1, including beating the Rockies 3 times in a row this week. And they're now 10-2 in the season. And they're just such a deep ball club. They got 5 batters batting over 400 right now, including Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger. They're bringing up youngsters to try them in the lineup because they can. Justin Turner, who they brought back, is still hitting. He hits just a missile last night, gets into a guy's nacho bag, explodes everywhere. So he's been fantastic. He's still producing at a high level at third base. So that's nice to see. But I look at Trevor Bauer. I look at Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Dustin May, Julio Reyes. This team doesn't have a weakness, and they're showing it. They're 10-2, and they're in a weak division. I mentioned in my previous show, Arizona's weak. San Francisco's weak. You got Colorado is not a very good team anymore. The Padres are their only resistance, but they've had some injuries. Tatis Jr. has been out for over a week. So this could really be a rout of a division early on in the season. And they'll go through their stretches where they lose games, but this team is just too good. I mean, you got David Price in the bullpen. You got Dustin May, who can also start for this team. It's incredible what they've done so far this year. And I just think it's important to look at them and really just respect what they've done. They won a World Series last year. It was kind of skewed. People looked at it as an asterisk season because it was 60 games and different season. And I get that. I do get that because it's 60. You play 162 in baseball, but you look at this team, they've gotten better somehow, and they come into the season just more and more prepared to win a championship. They're always ready. Dave Roberts has his team ready to play. And, they battled through stretches where they win tight games, where they've been soaring. Other teams with high expectations have been struggling, notably the Atlanta Braves, 4-7. Freddie Freeman batting under $150. Ozzie Albies batting under 200 to start the year. Acuna Jr. has been fantastic, but other than him, you got Austin Riley, who's batting under 200. The bats have been really quiet for the Atlanta Braves. And, also Ian Anderson, the 22-year-old starting pitcher who looked like a dynamo last year, has had 2 really poor starts, giving up over 5 earned in both starts. So they haven't had Mike Soroka, the big Canadian, on the mound yet after blowing out his Achilles last year. So we haven't seen him. No, I think they'll be able to turn it around. We got Acuna, you got Freeman, you got Ozzie Albies. You got a pretty good shot. They got a strong team. So I don't worry about the Braves, but they have had a tough start playing some of the division, losing 3 out of the 4 to the Phillies last week. They're battling the Marlins this week, winning a close one last night. But they're in the toughest division in baseball, in my opinion, with the Phillies and the Mets, Marlins. You got some tough teams down there. So they're going to have to battle through that. The Minnesota Twins, again, they've been struggling as well, losing to the Red Sox 3 times in a row. Under 500 for the season. They're in a really weak division. So I'm not totally worried about them yet either. The Tigers are 500, but I don't think they're a 500 ball club. Cleveland Indians are 500. I don't think they're a 500 ball club. The White Sox can be a threat to the Twins, I believe. They're a young team with not a lot of experience, but they do have some bats that can come alive. And I mentioned Carlos Rodon. He's a good starting pitcher. So I'd never rule out the Chicago White Sox being a threat. But just the Twins, Nelson Cruz has been great on the bat, but you need guys, Byron Buxton, Mitch Garver, Jorge Polanco. You need these guys to step up, and we haven't seen that yet this year. And another team I'll throw in there, the Washington Nationals. Starting pitching has not been great so far. Patrick Corbin, Max Scherzer got lit up on his first start. Steven Strasburg gave up 8 the other night, over, I believe, 3 in the third. So it's been a little ugly for them. They're going to have to find their game quickly because they're in a tough division. You do not want to fall too far behind. But we'll see what happens in the nation's capital. I worry more about them because of their division. I think I've watched a lot of the Mets so far this year. They look solid. I even think the Phillies have improved a lot. They're playing tighter baseball. Again, the Marlins made the playoffs last year. They're kind of similar to the Blue Jays where they're a younger team, but they're in a really tough division. So I see it tough for them to make the playoffs. And you got, the Nationals, who have a mix of veterans and younger players, but they still have the core pitching staff that won the World Series. So with Steven Strasburg and, especially Max Scherzer, I don't see him going down and, pitching poorly, but we'll see how they respond this season. I think they'll be under a lot of pressure to win again and just keep themselves competitive in a really, really tight division. That brings us to the National Hockey League. And, coming off the trade deadline, a lot happened, but most of it was bit pieces. The Taylor Hall trade, I don't see that as a blockbuster trade. It would have been a couple years ago when he was traded to New Jersey for Adam Larson, of course. But Taylor Hall's got 2 goals in 38 games this season. So Boston acquiring him is not a blockbuster because the guy's just not a superstar anymore. Acquiring superstar Taylor Hall would be. Anthony Mantha going to the Washington Capitals is a big trade, no doubt. But is he a superstar? No. He's a guy that is a 20, 25 goal scorer who his give a shit meter is often pointed downward. That worries me. But again, he's not a superstar. David Riddick, Nick Foligno. Foligno's a good player. That's not a blockbuster addition. I think he's a third line winger, maybe second on this team. But again, so you don't expect that often at the trade deadline. We see the Erik Karlsson trade every once in a blue moon, Mark Stone, but it doesn't happen all the time. So looking at a couple of debuts, I'm going to start talking about Anthony Mantha. And so Anthony Mantha is a power play specialist. He's got a good shot. Again, work ethic, like I just mentioned, bit sporadic, but he can play. He can certainly use an NHL player, was a really good junior hockey player with the Val-d'Or Flora, but he gets his debut. He's on the second power play unit, and his debut went really well. He scores a power play goal, gets an assist on the first goal of the game, and was robbed away from scoring his second goal by Brian Elliott. So really strong start for him. He did look reinvigorated, but you got to see a sample size from every player, but I think especially from a guy with his mentality. He's a guy that, really, I think, wanted out of Detroit. He did recently sign an extension, but when you're losing, it can get really deflating. And eventually the hustle, it seems to leave his game. Once you get comfortable somewhere, you don't always give the best effort night in, night out. So I'll be interested to see what he brings, but you look at his debut, it fit well. And, the Washington power play is lethal. You got Backstrom, you got Ovechkin, you got John Carlson at the back, and you got TJ Oshie, who plays the bumper position, who scores a lot of power play goals, especially this year. I just look at the Washington Capitals team and say, yeah, they're definitely Stanley Cup contenders. My one worry is in net. You got Samsonov, you got Vanacek. Both of them have played well in spurts this year, but neither of them have played a lick in the playoffs. And I just look at the team and say, well, who are you going to go to? Who's the starter? I mean, Vanacek's been better than Samsonov this year, but Samsonov's a former first-round pick who I believe they thought was their goalie of the future when they let Braden Holtby walk, which looks like a great decision because he's been a disaster in Vancouver. But that's my one worry. Again, you can try to outscore your problems, but the power plays go away in the playoffs. And I think that's one credit you give to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, they have a good power play, but you're not always going to get the whistle in the playoffs. You're not always going to get the diving call when Mitch Marner flops around. So you need to prepare yourself to play 5-on-5. And I think Washington can do that. But again, they get a lot of their offense from their power play. So that's one where I do have for them is what are they going to do when the power plays dry up? And also, in net, what can they do to keep pucks out of the net? What can they do to help their defensemen who are a decently strong core, but can surely be better? I think could have been improved as well. So interesting start there. Taylor Hall plays his first game for the Boston Bruins against his former team, the Buffalo Sabres, which seems to be a trend. He wasn't really noticeable to me. David Krejci did score. Taylor Hall's not on the ice. He just driven from Buffalo, so we'll see. He plays his second game tonight against the New York Islanders. But playing with Krejci and DeBrusk seems to be what they want to do right now. And you got to hope he works. Again, it was rumored that Vegas offered a first-round pick for Taylor Hall, to Buffalo for Taylor Hall, but he wanted to go to Boston. He nearly signed with them this offseason. He vetoed a trade to Vegas. So he wanted to go to Boston. He had a full no move, which is crazy that you give a guy that has a 1-year deal and no move clause after he'd been mediocre at best in Arizona and New Jersey the past couple of seasons. So we'll see. I don't know why teams are doing that. It makes no sense to me to give players like that a no move clause, but I guess if GMs are that desperate, but again, you lost yourself a first round pick by doing that. So I don't know. Stupid management, I guess you could put it down to, but a lot of teams are doing it. So there's a lot of suckers and idiots out there. David Riddick. Yeah, he was solid for the Leafs. The Leafs Flames Tuesday night, watched some of that game. It wasn't a very entertaining game. Not a lot of shots on goal, keeping pucks to the outside, both teams. Calgary, just back-to-back wins after beating Montreal again last night. Playing the Daryl Sutter style, I'll give them that the past couple nights, not giving their opponents much to work with, trying to stay out of the box. So, that's worked. It might be a little too late. Even they're 4 points behind Montreal, but Montreal has 3 games in hand. So, looks like they're running out of runway there. But Riddick, when it comes to the Leafs, he was fair. He didn't do anything wrong. I look at the goals and I can't put any of them on David Riddick. Toronto was 9-0-1 prior to this week. They were due for a slew of losses here. I think they should have lost Saturday night against Ottawa, but they beat Ottawa because Ottawa couldn't stop a puck. And, Toronto's just got some elite talent that can break a game open when you need them to. But, they get a couple losses, and now they get the Winnipeg Jets tonight, who get a win last night in the nation's capital. And I mentioned on the show that Winnipeg didn't do enough for me at the trade deadline. They got Jordy Ben, who's really a seventh defenseman. You don't add another defenseman. I think Jamie Oleksiak would have been a perfect fit. Again, you try to do more to get David Savard not to go to Stanley Cup champions. So that's a weakness, but they get a win last night. They get a power play goal. They get a shorthanded goal, so special teams was on full effect last night. But tonight's Toronto-Winnipeg game is important for a couple of reasons to me. Number one, I'm happy it's not Toronto-Edmonton. All 9 matchups are done. Woo! I'm excited. So those games are dogs. If you watch Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary tells these entrepreneurs with really bad companies, really bad products, you take it behind the barn like an old dog and you shoot it. Yeah, those 2 teams playing together, you can take that one behind the woodshed, chop its head off. But yeah, no love for me there. But it's important that it's not that matchup for me. That's just me being picky. But, Winnipeg's within 5 points. They've both played 43 games, but they play each other 4 times remaining this year, including tonight. So if Winnipeg wins these matchups, they're in first. It may come down to these head-to-head matches. If you can win these games in regulation, then it can put you back into the hunt for the playoffs. Now, I think Toronto will likely win tonight. I mean, they should. Winnipeg's on a back-to-back. They had to travel. They get in late. You look at Toronto and Winnipeg. Toronto's without Bill Nylander. Winnipeg's been without Blake Wheeler the past 4 games. He's got concussion-like symptoms. He's back in Winnipeg. So they are missing some pieces. Connor Hellebuyck will get the start tonight. But I just look at it with Jack Campbell and net. With their team, their roster basically set. Foligno's in quarantine now in Toronto. But I think it's important for Toronto to get a win. Something that I think needs to be said, and I think I give this guy a ton of credit. Alex Galchenyuk has been fine. I think he works hard. And, kudos to him. But he's on 19 and 7. You should fucking work hard. Again, it's like losing the weight for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You're a pro athlete. Galchenyuk, if it took you 9 teams to figure out that you got to work hard to stay in the NHL, well, you got bigger problems. He's playing on the second line, and I get it. He's Daryl, Alex Galchenyuk, Hitler. I get it. But he's got 1 goal. He's got 1 goal in 13 games. It's problematic. You can't go into the playoffs with him on your wing with 1. He's got 1 goal. Yes, you can work hard, and you know who works hard? Ilya Mikheyev and Pierre Engvall. But those guys have no hands. They're not finishers. Galchenyuk was drafted to be a goal scorer. So now he's just going to work hard and be a plugger? No. So I'm not sold on Galchenyuk being on that wing come the playoffs. Maybe it's Nick Foligno. It's not Nick Robertson. I've seen him play a few times this week. Oof. He's been injured. I get it. He's not NHL ready. I don't see Toronto forcing this, but they shouldn't, because they should have enough depth to play these guys, because Nick Robertson is not NHL ready. Even me, I'm a fan of hockey, not a fan of a team, but fans clamor to see prospects. And you look at Ottawa last night. I was pumped to see Jacob Bernard-Docker. I love the kid. The World Juniors, I think he's gonna be a really good NHL player playing some NCAA hockey. I was excited to watch him play. He played pretty well last night. Comparing him to Eric Brandstrom, I like Bernard-Docker. And I think he's gonna be a really good player for the Sens. You got Jake Sanderson. I mean, Brandstrom could hit. They got good stuff going. But you look at teams, and it's not just on Toronto. I'm just using Robertson as an example. You clamor to see a prospect play, and I get it, but why? Win. Nick Robertson does not give you a better chance to win right now with him in the line. He doesn't. What did he bring those last 2 games? Nothing? Yeah? Literally, that's what he brought. Nothing to write home about, that's for sure. And I just think you need to wait. Dylan Sandberg is a prospect for the Winnipeg Jets on the back end, who's gotten a lot of pub, who may have to play if there's injuries, but they haven't played him yet because they think their players are better options than him. I give them credit for that. Edmonton, forever is Evan Bouchard. You got to play Evan Bouchard. No, he's Justin Trudeau. He's just not ready. And you keep him down in the American Hockey League. There's nothing wrong with that. Just because fans clamor to see a prospect does not mean it's the time to bring up a prospect. If you listen to fans all the time, teams would be they'd be worse than they already are, some of these teams. But I just look at the Leafs roster and I think, who's going to play that second winger? Maybe it will be Galchenyuk. But I think a lot of people had him penciled in that slot before the trade deadline, saying, well, we don't need to upgrade our wings because we have Alex Galchenyuk. I'm not sure that's the case. Maybe Nick Foligno does go there, and I'm not going to say it's going to work or not because I haven't seen them play together yet. Saying that Foligno, Tavares, and Nylander is going to be a great line from anybody is wishful thinking because you haven't seen them take a snap yet. It's like the NFL draft. It's like what it is like going to a pro day and saying, okay, that guy's going to be a fantastic NFL player. Really? He's in shorts and a t-shirt. You know he's going to be great? No, you don't. You're just trying to get clicks, get a headline. Maybe they will be. Maybe they won't be. But I'm not going to make a judgment on Nick Foligno being on that line before I see it. I can look at Galchenyuk. He's played with them for 15 games. He's got 13 games. Sorry, he's got 1 goal. That's a fact. It's not conjecture. That's the bottom line. And to play on a top 6 winger, you're not going to get away with, oh, well, he works hard. Zach Hyman works hard, but he's got 15 goals and he's impactful every night. Alex Galchenyuk scoring 1 goal every 13 games. Oh, well, he works hard. Well, okay. I work pretty hard. I'm not playing in the NHL, though. But he's not, Alex Galchenyuk's not the guy to go work in the corner, get the puck, and then give it to Tavares. Tavares, he's been one of the better stories of the past couple weeks for me. I think Tuesday night against Calgary, I think he was the best player. Either team. But Tavares played fantastic. I think he played pretty well on Monday, too. I think that's a huge positive sign for Toronto because for most of this year, he's been stuck in quicksand where you think he's finally getting out. He's crawling his way through. And when he gets to the top, he gets sucked back in. I've seen a couple weeks stretcher where I've seen him play his best hockey, maybe as a Maple Leaf. That first year, yeah, he was great, but he was also playing with Mitch Marner, who, we all know and love. So looking at who he's been playing with is more important to me. He's been playing with Galchenyuk and Mikheyev, and he's been playing really good hockey. So kudos to him. I'm interested to see where Foligno fits in when they do it. Maybe they put Foligno with Matthews and Marner, and they put Hyman with Tavares and Bill. Because, again, he can still play, but Galchenyuk being penciled into that top 6, which I think a lot of Leafs fans have done, and I think Leafs management sort of did. I think you need to look at the bigger plan here and say, what has Galchenyuk really brought us offensively? Being a hard worker, okay, go play in the third, fourth line, because that's what their job is, just to work hard. That's never been his MO in his career, and I don't think he wants to start it now. Some big games tonight. I mentioned that earlier in the podcast. We got Tampa Bay, Florida, both at 58 points. Florida gets Sam Bennett at the deadline. We see David Savard. I believe he's going to make his debut for Tampa Bay tonight. So we'll see what comes of that game. Likely Bobrovsky versus Vasilevsky, the two Russians will go head-to-head. But Florida's without Carter Verhaeghe now. They've been out with Anthony Duclair has been out for a couple weeks. So they're dealing with some injuries, but again, you can never rule out the Florida Panthers this year. They just plug in guys, they play hard, and we'll see what happens with that matchup. That's an intriguing one tonight. You get Flyers, Penguins. Penguins just acquiring Jeff Carter. They're right in the thick of the playoff hunt, chasing the New York Islanders. Sidney Crosby's really found his game lately without Evgeny Malkin. Tristan Jarry is stable in that. Then you got Philly, who's coming off a 6-1 loss to the Capitals. They don't really have a starting goaltender. They've been a mess all year, but they're still in the playoff hunt somewhat. And getting a win tonight would be huge for them. And I'll be interested to see if they do start Carter Hart. I think the guy's lost a lot of his confidence, and I think it's almost impossible to put him in the net right now because you never know what he's going to give you night in, night out. We'll also see the New York Islanders play the Boston Bruins. Again, Boston's in a playoff race. You got the Rangers nipping at their heels, who've kind of found it lately. Boston gets a win Tuesday night in a shootout over Buffalo. But again, beating Buffalo any time of the year, in this abbreviated season, is not that impressive. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, beating Buffalo is not exactly, you're not breaking barriers beating the Buffalo Sabres. So we'll see what happens there. But the Islanders, since acquiring Palmieri, still integrating Palmieri's age. They got Coburn at the deadline. So big game for the Islanders. They're 2 points behind Washington, 2 points ahead of Pittsburgh. So they want to stay in the hunt for first and also stay ahead of Pittsburgh for that divisional lead when it comes to home ice in the playoffs. So those are some of the big games. We also got Nashville, Carolina tonight. That's got good playoff implications among some other games. And, last night we also saw, Devin Dubnyk make his first start for the Colorado Avalanche. They get a win over St. Louis Blues. Mike Hoffman had a 3-point night. But I look at the St. Louis team. They're in fourth. They're likely going to make the playoffs, but be fourth place because Minnesota continues. They get a win yesterday over Arizona. They just have consistent effort from their entire lineup. Rantanen becomes second in the league in goals with 26. He's been having a fantastic season. But St. Louis doesn't trade anybody off. Vince Dunn, Mike Hoffman was on the market, potentially Jordan Kyrou if they could get a big offer for him, maybe Bortuzzo, and they decided to keep everybody. It's interesting to me because I likely would have sold off some pieces. I would have tried to get better. Try to get better late, into next season with draft picks and prospects because Mike Hoffman's an unrestricted free agent. I don't think he's coming back. Vince Dunn's a restricted free agent. They said they want to trade him forever, so he's not likely coming back. Why not try to get assets right now for these players that are going to leave? And, okay, you make the playoffs. Congratulations, Doug Armstrong, but you're going to have to play Colorado in that first round. That's not a fun experience because Colorado, they got such a deep team. Liam O'Brien, who's a well-known journeyman, had 2 points last night in a fight. That's just what he does. But it's interesting to me because I see these teams that are going to make the playoffs and lose in the first round, and maybe just making that playoffs is important to them, but with likely no fans, again, there's no revenue. So I think if I was St. Louis, Mike Hoffman would have been off my roster for sure. Just his goal scoring prowess, I think you could have got a high pick for him, seeing what guys went through the day. I mean, Nick Foligno got traded for a first round pick. Mike Hoffman surely could have got traded for a first round pick, being a 30-plus goal scorer with one of the best shots in the league, a power play threat. So interesting move there from St. Louis, but they do have the lead for last in the West Division playoff race with also 3 games in hand on the Arizona Coyotes. The Sharks were in it for a bit, but they're 4 points back. They lose to Anaheim last night. So that division seems pretty well locked up with Colorado taking it home. But some good games tonight, definitely in the National Hockey League. And I look at the Tampa game and probably tune into some of that Toronto-Winnipeg game being the most important. Obviously, teams are missing players when it comes to injury, but I think we'll see Winnipeg, Toronto, how they match up again. I think they'll play each other later into the playoffs because Montreal's been inconsistent. I don't view Edmonton as a better team than Winnipeg. So definitely 2 potential second-round matchups tonight when it comes to the Toronto and also Tampa Bay and Florida if things go well. That brings us to the NBA. NBA season's been rolling through. A lot of injuries this year. You got Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Kristaps Porzingis for a long time. Embiid was out for 18 games. So it's been a tough season. I think the shorter off season has really affected players. Kevin Durant's missed a bunch of time. James Harden, there's all the drama with Kyrie Irving with family, personal reasons, and him missing time. So it's been a weird NBA season because normally you see a player and you're like, okay, that guy's the MVP or that guy's having a fantastic year. Or you see a team just, roll over everybody. Hasn't exactly happened this year. And last night we went into a game where the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets coming into the game tied with the best record in the Eastern Conference. 2 of the best teams in the NBA. Philly, really consistent all year. Joel Embiid started the year, looked like an MVP candidate, then gets injured. But the last couple games, I think he's back in the MVP race. Monday night, he scored 32 points in 26 minutes. Great stuff. And the big thing about Embiid, he's 7 feet tall, but he can shoot a 3, and he also shoots 87% from the free throw line, which is fantastic if you're not up to date with free throw percentage, especially for a 7-footer. Shaq was 7 feet. He shot under 50%, just for context. And he never could shoot a 3 to save his life. So that happened. And then Embiid last night, 36 points, 13 boards in just 33 minutes in a win over Brooklyn. Now, it should be celebrated for Embiid. He had a great game. He also had a great game Monday, like I mentioned, and Ben Simmons played well last night. But it didn't tell me much because the Brooklyn Nets were so undermanned. They were without James Harden. They were without Kevin Durant. They were without Marcus Aldridge, without Blake Griffin, without Spencer Dinwiddie, without Michael Chiozza, among others. So they put a B team on the floor, and they only lost by 6. It came down to the wire. Brooklyn fought the whole night. Kyrie Irving played really well. Jeff Green contributed. DeAndre Jordan had one of his best games in a long time, getting offensive boards, running the floor hard. Didn't go to him enough in the second half, in my opinion, but they lose the game. But if I'm Brooklyn, I feel great. You're without Kevin Durant, who I think is the best player in the NBA. You're without James Harden, who's one of the best gifted scorers in the history of the game. And you still only lose by 6 points. That's got to give you confidence. And for Philly, yeah, you'll take the win. But if I'm Doc Rivers, I'm looking at it saying, we're in trouble here. We let this B group with Kyrie Irving being the only superstar to dress for Brooklyn almost beat us. And Kevin Durant and James Harden are lurking for Philadelphia, because I guarantee you in the conference final, if they're healthy, they're playing. And Embiid and Simmons, Tobias Harris, Danny Green, Seth Curry have been great. Korkmaz. But to only win by that margin and then know what's coming down the road would really scare me if I'm a Philadelphia 76er fan today, because you know that these great players are coming back, and you're going to have no say in what they do. You can try to defend it better, but Kevin Durant's almost unguardable, being 7 feet tall and doing what he can do. So it was a good game for sure. I wish Kevin Durant, Harden were involved. It would have told me more about the conference final. That I think this will be the conference final. I look at the East. We've seen teams make some great strides. The Knicks, Charlotte, Atlanta. We've seen Miami have their ups and downs this year. Chicago's currently in a playoff spot. The Raptors have fallen off a cliff. Indiana's really struggled under their first year after Nate McMillan was fired. So they've struggled. But I just look at these two teams at the top. It doesn't matter who they match up against in the playoffs. They'll be the favorite. The Celtics are definitely a team that have not delivered as much as you'd like. They're always 7th or 8th in the Eastern Conference. They lose games they should win. And it's clearly frustrating for these players. And for management, I think for Brad Stevens, Jason Tatum, who they want to be a superstar, hasn't really shown that ability yet. Jaylen Brown is wildly inconsistent. They get Mo Wagner from Washington. He hasn't been all that he's cracked up to be. So this team's still waiting on a superstar to break out. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I like Brooklyn and Philly to get to the conference final. I think that'll be a great series, but you've got to look at Brooklyn right now and say, who beats them? I really don't know who does. And with this team healthy, I mean, Durant, Harden, and Kyrie have only played 10 games together all year, but I think they play a few down the stretch here. They'll find their chemistry and do some damage on the big screen. Also on Monday night, it was tough. Jamal Murray, he's running down the floor, doesn't move to go up for a layup, non-contact injury. He lands and he can't put any weight in his knee. They wheeled out the wheelchair. I said, oh, this is terrible. And he blew out his ACL. Now, it's terrible news for sure. He's out for the season. The Denver Nuggets made it to the conference final last year. I'm sure they wanted to get back there. But it's not all bad, and I'll tell you why. It's not an Achilles tear. A ruptured Achilles is the worst injury that you can have in sports. It's killed careers. I view it closer to Tommy John surgery in baseball because it really can affect you. We've seen quarterbacks come back, not be the same player. We've seen guys just not have it consistently the way they did before. So I worry about Jamal being the same player, but it's an ACL. He should be fine. We've seen guys come back and play really well from a torn ACL. It's not a life-threatening injury. But so that happened. They're in 4th right now. That's likely going to put them at 4th or lower. I mean, they get a big win last night over Miami without him. Michael Porter stepped up with a double-double. But they got Aaron Gordon, they got Porter Jr., they got Will Barton, but they don't got Jeremy Grant anymore off the bench, who could have been a good addition for them. So we'll see what happens. But I think they're in a tough spot right now when it comes to what Denver's going to do. You look at the Western Conference. I like, Jazz are in first place. They have been all year. I like their team a lot. Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year, Stifle Tower, really consistent. Donovan Mitchell is really emerging as a superstar. They got Joe Ingles, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. Royce O'Neal, again, really solid. Jordan Clarkson off the bench, who may just win the Sixth Man of the Year award. But we haven't seen them in the playoffs have success. They lose last year in the first round. Then you go to Portland. Portland's gone to a conference final, but they always get injuries, it seems like, in the playoffs with Nurkic. And then you're stuck with Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and it's not enough to beat a LeBron James-led Lakers team if it comes down to that. So I have worries about them. Phoenix Suns. Phoenix is the most intriguing because I think they're on the rise the most. They're a team that people are rooting for. They hope to see win a championship eventually with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, Dario Saric. But they've had mixed reviews. They're second in the West, but again, no real playoff experience. I don't see them winning a title. And that leaves us really with Clippers-Lakers. And that would be my prediction for the conference final. I think the Clippers have won 7 in a row, including beating Detroit last night with just their bench. No Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard. They get the win there. So with the Lakers coming back, when LeBron gets healthy, when Anthony Davis gets healthy, you got Dennis Schroeder, you got Anthony Davis. You're gonna have so many players available to play. It's gonna be hard to find minutes. Kyle Kuzma. How many minutes does Andre Drummond get per game? Does Marc Gasol stay in the starting lineup? Because he's been complaining about that after he's been really inconsistent this year. So with this injury, definitely Jokic will definitely get looked at for the MVP. But I look at the landscape of the league and say, I'm not sure he can win. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. But I just look at these teams on the outside looking in saying, well, they haven't had the experience that the Lakers did last year getting to the finals. The Clippers, I mentioned, taking your licks. The Clippers lost in the second round last year to Denver after being up 3-1. I'm sure that left a sour taste in their mouth. They don't want to let that happen again. So this year they may be more motivated. They come into this game. They come into this playoffs. It's not in a bubble. And they go out there and beat the hell out of the Toronto Raptors. I guess we'll see. But that's pretty much everything today. I'll get back into the golf tomorrow with the Hilton Head Tournament in South Carolina. NHL tonight, mentioned some of the big games. We'll dive into that. Talk about Major League Baseball. I think I'm going to be doing 2 podcasts tomorrow. Normal recap in the morning. Then I'm going to be doing just a primer, just to touch on basketball, maybe do some questions, do a little questionnaire for myself, see what I think. Just a couple hot takes there. So we'll get into that. Also, the 100th episode coming up. I'll keep you guys up to date on what we're planning to do for that. And also, if you didn't listen to the podcast Tuesday, listen to myself and Seamus Fillmore debate who's better, Adam Sandler or Will Ferrell. It was a lot of fun. I'm not going to tell you who we chose, but listen to that podcast, and you'll also hear at the end of that one what me and Seamus will be covering next on here on To The Point. So, as always, thank you guys for the support. Almost the end of the week, so hang in there. Enjoy your Thursday, and we'll talk soon.